Hello friends, welcome back to Storytime with Nana, Lynn, and Glow. As you know, we are working on The Mysteries of Lancaster County, Another's Treasure by Nancy Mell, and we are all the way up to chapter 17. So let's continue with the story and find out what in the world is going on. That evening, the sisters gathered around the kitchen table once again. Although the rain had stopped and it had turned into a beautiful spring day, once the sun had gone down, the temp had gone down with it. And Martha's homemade stew helped warm Elizabeth from the inside out. While Elizabeth shared the details of her visit with Ruth and Anita, Martha and Mary ate. Every few minutes she'd stop and take a bite. In truth, she wanted nothing more than to concentrate on her supper and forget the events of the day. When she dipped her spoon into the stew once again, Mary spoke up. "At least you know Ruth isn't a crook," she said with a smile. After swallowing, Elizabeth pointed her spoon at her sister. "I never thought she was." Maybe I did. I don't know anymore. Right now, everyone seems suspicious. "So Anita was okay until you brought up the sword?" Martha asked. "But why would she get upset with you? You had nothing to do with it." Elizabeth shrugged. "She just wants it back. She thought Uriah had left town. It had never entered her mind that he would end up buying the sword. She even offered me $1,000 to bring it to her." Mary gasped. "Really? Is it in his house?" "Mary," Martha said, "don't even think about it. We're not going to steal that sword, not for any amount of money." "I know," Mary said, her bottom lip jutting out in a slight pout. "It was just a thought." "Well, it was a bad thought," Elizabeth said. "Now, we need to figure out how to make Anita happy so she'll give that painting to Kelly." Martha smiled loudly. "Sometimes I wonder if we'll still be looking for Anita's so-called treasures 10 years from now." Excuse me. "Has it occurred to you that it might not even be among the items that she gave us? What if it's something still in the house?" Anita hired an appraiser after she found her father's letter. He couldn't find anything in the house with as much value as the letter indicated. That's when she decided she must have given it to us. "But we still don't know for certain." Elizabeth nodded. "You're right. What if Warren imagined the whole thing? And here we're running around like crazy people, trying to find something that doesn't exist." "I, for one, think it exists," Mary said. Martha sighed and leaned back in her chair, folding her arms across her chest. "And just how did you come up with that? Do you have some kind of special insight the rest of us don't have?" Mary frowned at her. "No, it's just that, well, it's the riddle. It just seems specific, like it was written by someone who knew exactly what he was talking about." Martha shook her head slowly. I don't know. "Actually, I agree," Elizabeth said. "It feels like something real. But we have to accept the possibility that Warren was confused when he wrote it," Martha said. Mary got up and went over to the kitchen drawer where they kept the riddle. "Let's try it again," she said. "Maybe this time something will pop out at us that we missed before." The last thing Elizabeth wanted to do was listen to that silly riddle again. But she knew if they could solve it, the situation with Anita might very well come to an end, and she was willing to do anything to make that happen. Mary brought the paper over to the table. "Okay, here we go. When lightning speaks and feathers fly." So far we've decided that when lightning speaks and feathers fly translates into Thunderbird, Martha said. "And your mother's sister's child is your cousin. What in the world do Thunderbirds and cousins have to do with anything?" Elizabeth asked, unable to keep her frustration in check. "Doesn't make sense." "Wait a minute," Mary said. "You'll find yourself feeling quite continental. A Thunderbird is a car, so is a Continental. We've been through this already. We don't have any cars, and besides, what do cars have to do with someone's cousin?" She grabbed her bowl, pushed her chair back, and got up. "I don't want to hear this stupid riddle anymore. I wake up in the middle of the night trying to solve it. I think Warren was out of his mind, and this riddle is proof of it." Is there anything Anita gave us that connects to this riddle in any way? Elizabeth asked, trying to calm her sister. Well, that's the question we should be asking ourselves. Well, let's see, Martha said, her tone sarcastic. We don't have any cars, and we don't know Anita's cousins, so no. Nothing she gave us lines up with this stupid riddle, nothing. Wait a minute, Elizabeth said slowly. Didn't you tell me you took pictures of some of Anita's things when they came in, Mary? Yeah, to help Martha set up the inventory book. What about the sword? I think so. I'm pretty sure I did. Can I see it? Mary got up and left the room, and when she came back, she had her phone in her hand. Hopefully, I didn't erase it. I meant to delete all the pictures once Martha was finished, but you know me, sometimes I get behind. For once, Elizabeth was grateful that Mary was scatterbrained. She might be wrong, but she had an idea that might actually help them. Can you pull up a picture of the sword? Mary scrolled through her pictures for a couple of minutes. Then she stopped. Here it is. I have a couple of shots, but unfortunately they're not very clear. She handed her phone to Elizabeth, and Elizabeth nodded when she looked at it. Look at the scabbard. Would you call that a thunderbird? She passed it to Martha, who stared at it for a moment. I don't know, she said slowly. This picture is so fuzzy. I mean, it kind of looks like an eagle. What does a thunderbird look like? Well, I don't know, but look at what he's holding in his talons. Martha peered closer. Could it be bolts of lightning? Elizabeth nodded. Look, even if this is an eagle, it's still a thunderbird, right? I mean, it's a bird with thunderbolts in its talons. Get it? Martha handed the phone back to Mary. Maybe. Frankly, I'd need to see better pictures, or better yet, the sword itself, before I could really tell you if this fits the riddle. But even if you're right, what does that have to do with a cousin? Elizabeth snorted. I have no idea. But maybe the sword got back to the Smuckers through one of their cousins. Anita didn't say anything about it, but I believe the riddle is pointing to the sword. It has to be. This is the only thing that makes sense. Well, you might be right, Martha said. But in my research, I couldn't find anything that would make me think it was worth very much. Must be something about this particular sword we don't know, Mary said. Maybe the rest of the riddle will make it clearer. She stared at the paper in front of her. The sword originally belonged to the Smuckers, so I guess that makes it sentimental. Sentimental? Elizabeth said sharply. Gideon Smucker was killed with it. How could that be sentimental? Mary and Martha just stared at Elizabeth. She knew she sounded a little manic, but the riddle, dealing with Anita, all of it was getting to be too much. Martha started to say something when the house's landline rang. Mary jumped up and grabbed the phone. After she said hello, she asked the caller to hold on for a moment, and then she handed the phone to Elizabeth. It's a man, she whispered, and I don't recognize the voice. Hello, she whispered, hoping that it wasn't more bad news. Miss Klassen, this is John Marks, the police officer, remember me? I do hope I'm not bothering you. Elizabeth felt her face grow hot. She got up from her chair and carried the phone into the living room. No, we just finished supper, she said. I'm not busy. Good. John cleared his throat. Say, I know this is kind of out of the blue, you might say, but there's a play in Bird in Hand stage Saturday night. I hear it's good. I wondered if you'd like to go to the show and then out to dinner. Although Elizabeth tried to find a way to explain that her life was too busy to take time off at the moment, out of her mouth came the words, why, yes, I'd love to. She almost put her hand over her mouth in shock. Why had she said that? Wonderful, John said. The play starts at 6. I'll pick you up at 5, if that's okay. All right. I look forward to it. Me too. See you Saturday. As Elizabeth hung up the phone, a sense of panic set in. What would she wear? She didn't have anything appropriate. Oh, why had she agreed to this? What's going on, Lizzie? Mary had quietly come into the room and stood a few feet away. Elizabeth went over and grabbed her hand. Oh, Mary, I just did the dumbest thing. Mary frowned. What do you mean? That was John Marks, the police officer who came here the other night. Mary's face lit up. I remember. Let me guess. He called to ask you out, didn't he? Surely you said yes. I did, and I shouldn't have. It's like the words just jumped out of my mouth. without my permission. Mary squeezed her hand. It's because you really want to go, Lizzie. Your heart took over your mouth, and I'm glad. I know you'll have a wonderful time. Oh, Mary, I have absolutely nothing to wear, and my hair. Elizabeth reached up and ran her fingers through her straight hair. Those are all things we can fix, Lizzie. I'll help you with your makeup and hair, and I have the perfect outfit for you to wear. I guarantee you'll knock your socks off. Well, I don't know. Martha, who'd been standing in the door listening, came up and put her arm around Elizabeth. So, what were you wearing when you met him, sis? I don't remember. I guess just a plain skirt and a yellow blouse, my plain old loafers. Were you wearing makeup? Not much, just a little mascara. Yet he called you for a date, Martha said with a simple smile. Don't you realize he already likes you? We'll help you get dolled up if that's what you want. But he asked you out based on how you looked the other night. He found you attractive just as you are. You have nothing to worry about. The truth of what her sisters said got through to her. He did like her when she was dressed in her frumpiest. She liked John. She actually wanted to go out with him. The truth chased away the tightness in her stomach. I guess you're right, but I still want you to help me. A little more attention to my looks wouldn't hurt. Mary laughed and Martha hugged her. Let's clean up your dinner dishes. Elizabeth followed her sisters back into the kitchen. For the first time in days, Anita Smucker wasn't the most important person on her mind. Well, there. Now, that's an interesting twist. All right. Well, you guys stick around and I'll see you in the next video.